There is always a shock in seeing him. The air crackles with the power of his presence.
My dad left a really wonderful legacy, and I meet people all over the world who really admire him and admire his work, and really have been very positively affected by it, too.
In less than 2 years, Bruce Lee brought international recognition to martial arts films and was proclaimed king of that genre. But like most kings, he had a fatal flaw, which ended his brief reign and shrouded his reputation in controversy.
Bruce had a thorough physical checkup in the States, and the doctor responsible for his checkup told him that he was a man in the 20s. His physical fitness was such that he was still a man in his 20s. So I think Bruce must be fully convinced by then that he was invincible. You know, he was really in his perpetual youth. That was probably what brought him down.
His untimely death put fans around the world in a state of shock and disbelief. Until an official inquiry could be held, all questions were met with a silence that bred fantastic and exotic rumors. When the verdict was finally delivered, it was less than satisfactory. The cryptic verdict was that the cause of Bruce Lee's death was death by misadventure.
My last name is Lee, Bruce Lee. I was born in San Francisco in 1940. I'm 24 right now.
And you worked in motion pictures in Hong Kong?
Yes, since I was around 6 years old.
Before his obsessive study of the martial arts began, Bruce Lee was a Hong Kong child movie star. Born with an acting heritage, Bruce Lee had his first starring role at the age of 6. Even at this young age, his natural talent and the charisma that later brought him stardom are clearly evident.
His childhood was spent in between the film sets and schools, so it was rather different from the other children's. I thought he was a fairly tricky guy, but after you know him well enough, you'll find him a fairly interesting person.
Lee's roles were diverse. They include a naive Romeo, a comic buffoon, and a cool James Dean type.
I love you. 你講乜嘢啫？我愛你啊嘛，阿英，我全心愛你，你肯唔肯嫁俾我啫？我想買飛啊！買飛？你今年幾歲啊？我12歲，12歲啊！你唔睇得嘅，我點解唔睇得？我而家我冇錢買飛啊！有錢都唔賣俾你噶嘛，凡係未入成年嘅細路咧就唔准睇噶。係 佬，如果你想睇，遲幾年大個咗先嚟睇啦。玩第二樣嘢，睇唔睇你好價值啊？咁啊，細路仔，想睇節目啊？想啊點啊？佢話唔賣飛俾細路哥嘅喎，佢唔賣飛俾你咩？唔好。你想睇啊？梗係想睇咯，驚啊！啊？人哋去街冇錢點得㗎？哎呀，怕你啊，前世欠負你啊，自己喺床頭櫃攞啦。你識唔識呢啲字？識。一寸光陰一寸金，寸金難買寸光陰。識唔識解？解啊？係。解一寸金，咁啊即係一寸金啦，啊！寸金難買寸光陰，咁佢買啲光陰嚟做咩啫？嗱，我解俾你聽啊。
His whole family had been in show business for many generations.
Elements of Bruce Lee's off-screen character are revealed in these early film images. This might be surprising to audiences now because of the comparatively one-dimensional roles in the films that later made him a star.
飲咗佢啦，你為我飲咗佢啦，唔係啊，爸爸又嬲噶啦。
He was a troublemaker when he was young, and because of his American nationality, his father sent him off to San Francisco in order to study.
And when did you leave Hong Kong?
1959, when I was 18.
He did not start teaching martial arts on his arrival in the States. He had only been my pupil for a short time, for about a year and a half. He was not an exceptional student, only being a bit more diligent than most. Instead, he was teaching people dancing like cha-cha. He liked showing off his martial prowess when occasions called for it, always capturing the fascination of Westerners. Later on, he started teaching Wing Chun.
Wing Chun is one of the simplest forms of Chinese martial arts, relying on economy of motion rather than flowery movements. Bruce would draw extensively from his Wing Chun background when he evolved his own fighting system.
When he was my pupil, he always wanted private lessons away from the other pupils, which was selfish of him. Subsequently, I refused this request as all who came to study should always be treated with equal attention. Sensing my resilience, Bruce conjured up a rather wicked way to achieve his needs. Every day after school, he would rush to my home in Mong Kok Road before the other pupils arrived, but did not come in to see me. When he saw the other pupils arriving, he would walk down the stairs. I live on the second floor then. He then told them I was not in and then left with them. On seeing everybody off at the bus stop, he would then return to my home for tuition on his own. You can see from this that he was a fairly smart boy.
In 1959, Bruce Lee came to Seattle. That's where I met him. We were both attending Edison Technical School. After I met Bruce, he began to teach a group of other people, and we started putting on demonstrations. One of the demonstrations at school, there was a karate man in the audience. He took offense to some of the things that Bruce was saying. He decided that he was going to challenge Bruce.
So the guy then became convinced that Bruce was afraid of him. And I don't know, the way the guy thought was along those lines. It's the kind of guy that figured if somebody doesn't want to fight me, he must be afraid of me.
The man continued to harass Bruce at school. Finally, he forced Bruce into a confrontation. Bruce wanted to fight at the school. I told him it wasn't a good idea. We agreed to fight at the YMCA.
And I remember one of the guys saying that, one of the Japanese guys was saying, well, after this is settled, we don't want any more things like this. And everyone hardly agreed, except the karate man. He sat there looking very, very stern and very, very removed from it all, detached, like he didn't want to even talk.
This is a place where Bruce Lee had the challenge match with a karate man. It was a place that I suggested because Bruce wanted to fight at the school, and I knew that if we fought at the school, there was a very good chance that we could get in trouble. So this is the building where it took place, and this is the entrance where we went into the building.
We went in and we went to the handball court, and that was where they'd agreed to fight because it was where nobody would bother them and there was plenty of room. And we all went in together.
Ed, Bruce, Howard, and I walked through the door here. We were waiting for the guy to go change his clothes. And Bruce came in, took off his shoes, took off his shirt, did a few knee bends, and we just stood waiting for this guy to come into the room.
So the karate man came back after a while dressed in his karate uniform. And so they agreed that Jesse would be the referee. Now, Jesse was also Bruce's second, and he was also going to be the referee, but I guess everybody figured Jesse would give it a fair shake. So they agreed that I would be the timekeeper. So I got out my watch and I held it there, and I was supposed to say when to start. So I said they would start when I said begin, So I said, okay, ready, begin. And I looked up and the guy had started to kick at Bruce, which Bruce parried and punched the guy. And after that, he just straight punched him. He just straight punched him into the wall. The guy went all the way back and slammed into the wall, and Bruce kept straight punching him. And the guy's head was being smashed around like a pumpkin or something, and his arms were kind of flying out to the side. He looked helpless to me. He was finished. And as the guy landed on the floor on his knees, Bruce kicked him like this, just a straight kick, like you'd kick a football. Kicked him in the face, and the guy flipped over in his back, and somebody screamed. At the moment Bruce kicked him, somebody screamed, "No!"
The guy fell back unconscious. I hollered, "Stop." And that was it.
So we stood there looking at him, and the guy was laying there like he was dead. And we looked at each other, and we looked at him. Said, "Shit."
Bruce Lee is a big crowd attraction for promotion of tournaments, and he really had a name and he had the talent, and he performed two-finger push-up, which I cannot do with 4 fingers. Even now I can't do. And he did the 1-inch punch with a 225-pound Jack Dutcher, who used to be my instructor, and he really gave a great impression to the audience with such a power with his small statue against a 225-pound guy.
I saw Bruce Lee demonstrate at June Lee's tournament. I had seen him do that type of technology before, so I was impressed because I knew the individual. Most people were not aware of what they were seeing, so they were in awe. They were really in awe. Most karate people were anti-Bruce Lee because he was different from what they were doing. They were like robots, and he was like a fluid snake. He was able to weave, bounce, jump, duck. He used boxing, wrestling, everything. That's why he was such an excellent martial artist.
But not everybody was thrilled that Lee was revealing the secrets of the Chinese fighting arts to Westerners.
He was giving a demonstration in the theater one time, and he usually, as people going up and to have him for demonstration, he would demonstrate his speed of punching. And he usually would stand about 3-4 feet from the target, and he would launch it with a front hand lead. And nobody can really block his punch, okay? And some Kung Fu master in the audience think that, he was being challenged, the Kung Fu people there. And so at that time, he also started teaching a Caucasian. In those days, they think that the Chinese only teach the Chinese. And so they selected one instructor just coming from Hong Kong recently at that time, and to challenge Bruce Lee. And they shop his school, and they set the rules, what to go by. And Bruce Lee said, no, you challenge me, and as far as I know, everything goes. So Bruce started using the turn and just give him a straight blast, and the guy just turn around and run. And the whole time he was tracing the guy, and all he hit him just in the back of his head.
I didn't see the fight, but Bruce called me up afterwards and explained to me the whole thing. And that was the birth of Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do, according to Bruce Lee, meant the way of the intercepting fist. I guess like if a punch or a kick is coming your direction, the man's energy is coming towards you, you want to try to intercept the person's force and use the opening, such as if a person is firing a punch at you, he's leaving his chin open, he's leaving his ribs open. If he's firing a kick, he's leaving his midsection open, he's leaving his groin open. He's immobile, he can't move if he's standing on one foot executing the kick. And then you can take advantage of the person's weak points at that particular time. To me, Bruce Lee studied a lot of J. Krishnamurti's philosophy. And to me, Jeet Kune Do, philosophically, was Krishnamurti's philosophy. It was a combination of the Taekwondo kicks, boxing, footwork, some Latin dancing type footwork. He used a lot of the Wing Chun punching techniques. So Bruce Lee, in my personal opinion, Jeet Kune Do was a combination of all the best aspects from a philosophical point of view to an athletic point of view to a martial arts point of view.
Bruce and my girlfriend and I, we went to his house. At that time, we started playing hands. He asked me what I knew, and I told him I know a little Hong and some Shaolin. Basically, it wasn't really a challenge or anything, because Chinese, we don't call it a challenge. It's a letter of introduction that I like to touch hands. So since he already found out that I knew Mantis, he said, well, we're very similar, Norman. As you know, I do Wing Chun. So I said, yeah, so we played hands a little. And he was very fast. I was very impressed with his hands, because I haven't seen that kind of hand speed in a lot of martial artists. Most of them would also either cock their hands back, and Wing Chun is like Mantis also. Our hands are always in front of us, and when we move, it's just striking from here. It's really quick. And after I played hands with him, not that any of us got hurt or anything, we just sat down and there we were. We just became great friends. And I said to him, Bruce, what I want to tell the guys back in New York, He said, well, tell them whatever you want. He says, you want to tell them you beat me? You tell them that. You want to tell them I beat you? It's okay. So when he said something like that, it brought out to me that he didn't care what people thought about him. He decided to show me one of his kicks, and I said, okay, I stood behind the heavy bag, and here's this little guy, 135 pounds maybe. And even back in New York, not too many even karate or kung fu guys, if I stood behind a heavy bag, could move me. Well, I was standing behind a heavy bag, and he said something like, "Okay, you ready?" And I said, "I'm ready." So he threw a really great side kick, and like I moved. I moved like I nearly went through the door. So whether it was taken by surprise or whatever, I said I was really impressed. I mean, a little guy like that moved me, and I've had guys 6 foot tall, 180, 90 pounds, can't really like move me from the bag. So I was very impressed. Later on, he showed me his kick, and he had probably about 5 or 6 boards up to about maybe 6, 7 inches thick, and he did a side kick on it. He broke that.
He was fast, he was powerful, he was very perceptive. He could read you before you threw a blow. I sparred with him briefly. It was like trying to fight a shadow. And he closed the gap on you like a bullet. And never could figure out how he did it, but I think it was all up here. Mental. He could look at your eyes and tell just about when you are in between thoughts and bing, and he's already got your number down. You see, that's how good he was. And I think size wouldn't have made too much difference because he would have been very elusive. He wouldn't have, like he said, he said, you kick like you punch like you kick. And if you go against a big guy, you speed. You go a small guy, you overpower him. And so he was just a natural fighter.
From the first book, when he wrote his introduction, he discussed the yin and yang and the philosophy behind the martial arts. So that was very impressive to me because here was someone who just wasn't this macho brute, but he was a very intelligent man.
The karate punch is like an iron bar, whack. A kung fu punch is like an iron chain with an iron ball attached to the end, and it goes whang, and it hurt inside.
It was during one of his many demonstrations that Lee was first discovered by Hollywood. A screen test was promptly arranged, and he was cast opposite Van Williams in the Green Hornet television series. His acting skills could now work in conjunction with his physical abilities.
Show me now the difference between jiu-jitsu, which is long and involved, and kung fu, which is very quick, if you haven't fun.
All right, for instance, you will read it in the book, in a magazine and everything, that when somebody grabs you, you will first do this, and then this, and then, and then, and then, and then, thousands of steps before you do a single thing. Of course, this kind of magazine would teach you to be feared by your enemies and admired by your friends and everything. But in Kung Fu, it always involves a very fast motion. Like, for instance, a guy grabbing your hand. It's not the idea to do so many steps. Step him right on the instep. You let go. This is what we mean by simplicity. Same thing in striking and in everything. It has to be based on a very minimum motion so that everything would be directly expressed. One motion, and he's gone. Doing it gracefully, not to go, yelling and jumping all over him, but to do it.
Okay, now show me once again just a few movements there.
Well, Kung Fu can be practiced alone or with a partner. Practicing alone, they involve form. Some imitate a crane, a monkey, a praying mantis. This is a crane form. Start off. This is one of the movement involved.
Sure, one more movement and then we'll be all through.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. They have the tiger that start like a tiger, using claw to claw the face, or the bigger guys move. This is some of the movement involved.
In the Green Hornet, Westerners caught not only their first glimpse of Bruce Lee, but also of Chinese Kung Fu.
7:30 will start Friday's buzzing with The Green Hornet. That legendary nemesis of crime with his loyal companion Kato thrilled most of us as kids in one of radio's longest runs.
Although Lee was the series co-star, martial arts practitioners all over the United States placed the Green Hornet and Lee at the top of their viewing list. Some martial artists reportedly stopped classes to watch the show.
He was frustrated the fact that he didn't get the role in Kung Fu. He said that Hollywood played games with you.
Recognizing that his Hollywood opportunities were shrinking, Bruce Lee looked to Hong Kong for possible film work. His childhood friend Unicorn Chan worked at Asia's largest film company, the Shaw Brothers Studio. The studio's main action products were sword-fighting epics set in traditional China, although a few empty-hand fighting films were beginning to emerge. Lee's expectations clashed with the Shaw Brothers' hardline policies, and no deal was made.
What? $10,000 US a picture? You must know. All the beginners here only start with $200 Hong Kong a month.
Sorry, $10,000 is my living expenses.
Oh, look. We're the biggest film company in the Far East. We've got money. We can make high-class pictures together.
We'll talk it over later.
Huh? Nonsense.
While in Hong Kong, Lee appeared on a popular local talk show to discuss his life and career since leaving the colony in 1958. The Green Hornet series was having its first run on Hong Kong television. After excusing himself for using somewhat rusty Cantonese, Lee introduced his martial arts philosophy to Hong Kong viewers. He explained that many Chinese fighting systems had become weak and impractical. He consequently developed his own fighting method, Jeet Kune Do, which stressed simplicity, efficiency, and realistic training procedures. Lee emphasized that speed, power, precise timing, and absolute concentration were essential to assure victory. Although his theories were revolutionary, he gave a commanding demonstration. Objections to his comments about the classical martial arts were not openly voiced. A young boy named David Lowe, son of movie director Lo Wei, was watching the show. David told his father about Lee's demonstration. Mr. and Mrs. Lo Wei had known of Lee. Having heard that the Shaw brothers had been unable to make a deal with him, they contacted Raymond Chow, a former Shaw employee who had broken away to start his own production company, Golden Harvest. The Lows urged Chow to sign Lee to a contract. Upon viewing a tape of the show, Chow became convinced that Lee was box office gold. Using Mrs. Lo Wei as an intermediary, Lee and Chow reached a financial agreement and began work on their first film, The Big Boss. Production of the film took place mostly in Thailand. Lee was surprised at how crude the filming was in comparison to Hollywood, and made numerous script changes throughout the production. Unfortunately, the original director, Wu Xiatsang, overspent on the small budget, which caused a minor crisis. Director Lo Wei was approached to take over production, but showed no interest in working on a small-budget film without a big-name star in the lead role. The turning point came when he viewed some of the fight scenes Lee had already filmed, and apparently saw what Raymond Chow had seen, a potential box office blockbuster.
Mr. Chow, this brother Chinese should be given to me. But you say you're not interested. Well, that was long ago. Furthermore, only I can make him a star. You know that. Who just isn't good enough. But it's been already started. Change the director. It was my wife that got Sheun-Leung back from the States, so I should be the director. But what shall I say to Mr. Wu? Let me handle it. I've got ways. But, Mr. Zhao, I'm taking long-term business. Okay, as you say.
Lo Wei recognized Lee's star potential. Lee was subsequently awarded the lead. With a new director at the helm, the cast and crew of The Big Boss resumed filming with a sense of energy and purpose. Lo Wei had no illusions about great storylines or high drama for his production. He knew that the audience wanted action, and lots of it.
Mr. Liu, where should we set the angle?
Ask the cameraman.
But what should we do next?
Fight! Fight! Just fight!
The finished product was unlike anything Hong Kong audiences had seen. The Big Boss outgrossed any previous film that had played in the colony, foreign or local. Bruce Lee literally became an overnight sensation in Hong Kong. What started out as a temporary detour in his quest to succeed in Hollywood now became a full-time commitment. Initial attempts to release the film in non-Asian countries were met with resistance. Potential buyers didn't seem impressed with Hong Kong box office figures and didn't see how a Chinese movie could possibly make money outside of Asia. But after seeing the results in one overseas theater, they quickly changed heart.
The first real breakthrough was in Beirut. I did a four-wall deal for Big Boss in Beirut, and the film just took off, and people were flying to Hong Kong from all over the world to buy Kung Fu films following that. And that was really the first breakthrough.
Pre-production for Bruce's second film, Fist of Fury, began while Big Boss was still smashing records. With nearly triple the budget, it promised to be a surefire success, especially with Lo Wei's directorial touch. Lee was once again in the role of misunderstood loner, who single-handedly righted the wrongs inflicted on the Chinese people. This time, it was against the Japanese invaders of China. In real life, Lee had always expressed distaste for the Japanese theft of Chinese culture and their continuous mistreatment of China. Fist of Fury caused near riots when it premiered in March of 1972. Lee had taken the classical Chinese traits of humility and non-aggression and turned them inside out. Not only did he seek revenge for the wrongdoings of the villains, severe punishment was inflicted. On top of that, Hong Kong audiences had an alter ego through which they could live vicariously. As Fist of Fury played around the world, a strange phenomenon occurred. Films from numerous countries such as Greece, the Philippines, and Mexico were projecting their oppressed rage against the film's villains, substituting local or traditional enemies in place of the Japanese. Bruce Lee was unintentionally becoming an international avenging angel. Much in the way American teenagers had related their inner turmoil to James Dean. Lee had struck an untapped market of oppressed people who could now find release through his graceful yet deadly brand of violence.
I tried everywhere to sell the films. I mean, people would just not buy Chinese films. They said people don't want to see dub films. They don't want to see subtitle films. The dubbing is terrible. The first deal we made in America for the first Bruce Lee film, they said, oh, the dubbing is really, really bad. I mean, nobody's going to want to see these films. So they redubbed the film, and they spent a lot of money redubbing it. Then when the second film, I mean, the film just took off. I mean, it was just like a great, great big success. And before I knew what was happening, they'd released the second film. And I was in London, and I called them up, and I said, but wait a minute, how can you be releasing the second film? We haven't dubbed it yet. They said, dubbing doesn't matter. It's wonderful, just like it is. You don't need to dub them. So that was probably now, they were a little late coming online in the States. I mean, it was probably 73, if I recall, before they came online in the States. And the last place to release Bruce Lee's films would be the UK.
All right, you
read the script. It's our next picture. What do you think?
Well, Mr. Howe, I'm sorry, but it's not for me.
But why?
I don't happen to like it. The others that we did were pretty bad, but this is total crap.
What? How can you say something like that? Just what do you know about script?
Hey, take it easy. Don't lose your cool. It's just my opinion, Liu Chang.
Well, take your opinion and shove it up your ear. I don't want it. I'm the director. You remember that.
Yeah, man. That's why I want to do the film.
Hey, this is pointless. Stop it. Come on.
I didn't want to think that our production depended on you.
Well, if it doesn't, I know one thing. Directors like you, Chang, are a dozen to the dollar.
Damn you, Lee. Did you hear what he said about me? What am I supposed to do?
Look, Mr. Howe, I don't want to know about this picture. I'm going to direct my own.
It doesn't matter. Direct your own if you like. We don't need this egotistical little worm.
Take it easy. Hey, please, come on now.
With his newfound clout, Bruce Lee refused to work under the previous conditions of his last films. He was to take control of his career and destiny, much in the same way in which he approached the martial arts, under his own terms. Bruce Lee was the first man in Hong Kong's history to write, star, direct, and choreograph his own film. He also acted as producer, after forming Concord Productions with Raymond Chow.
Get Wong to go through it. Understand? If he likes it, we'll shoot it.
The first time I met Bruce Lee, it was back in 1972 or 73. Raymond wanted me to meet him because he wanted me to go to Italy to shoot a film. At the end, the film was called The Weight of the Dragon.
Using production savvy learned in Hollywood, as well as the speed and flexibility of Hong Kong filming, Bruce Lee ran a smooth ship during the shooting of Way of the Dragon. The somewhat biographical script had him once again defending his countrymen against evil-minded foreign devils, as well as traitorous Chinese who'd been corrupted by Western morals. Lee chose to use this time-proven storyline not out of patriotism, but commercialism. As far as he was concerned, Way of the Dragon would be seen only by local audiences.
Raymond said, "Would you like to be in a Chinese movie?" I said, "Well, why not? I haven't done that before." So I hadn't even heard of Bruce Lee, to tell you the truth. But then I got to know him, and he's from San Francisco, and I'm from San Francisco, and he just turned out to be a terrific guy. A lot of fun, joking all the time, and being on the set was a party. He wrote it, of course, and he directed it, and told everybody what to do right at the beginning, and everybody did it. We rehearsed it, and then one take, okay, next. So it went fairly quickly.
Lee's instincts were correct, as Way of the Dragon became Hong Kong's top-grossing film for 1972.
One thing for sure, he had that kind of charisma. Because whenever we go, people at that time didn't know who Bruce Lee was internationally. And whenever we go, wherever we go, slowly people will gather around and watch him.
His next film idea was one he'd had since 1959. Game of Death would be set in a tower that housed the best fighters from all over the world, and Lee would pit his skills against them. Accompanying him on this odyssey would be two other martial artists. One would be a strong, technically excellent fighter, and the other would be a clever tactician. Yet both men had serious flaws in their arsenals. The strong fighter would be too rigid in his ways to adapt to each opponent, and the tactician would not be physically and emotionally prepared to last against the onslaught. Lee, of course, would be the man who could adapt to any situation, being no style at all, yet all styles of fighting. His analogy was to be like bamboo, strong yet flexible. Acting as some of the opponents were Dan Inosanto, Jihan Jae, founder of Hapkido, and basketball star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. During production of Game of Death, Lee's cinematic achievements were finally noticed by Hollywood, and the film was put on hold.
When I was in Hong Kong he was on every single magazine cover, his picture. Not just the martial art magazine, not just the movie magazines, but the Hong Kong House and Gardens magazine or Woman's Day Journal, the equivalent. And if they could say what toothpaste Bruce Lee brushed his teeth with, they would have an article on him. That's how hot he was. When I was visiting, I was out eating, and my cousin rushed into his restaurant and said, "Hey, Bruce Lee's in a restaurant across the street from my boutique." So I was really excited. So I went out to that restaurant to wait outside, and obviously no one else knew because I was just waiting by the steps. And then suddenly these executives or these people just come running down the stairs, and they go into limo. And then suddenly I smell this cologne, from a mile away, and I'm looking up, and suddenly comes out this tiny man with these high elevator heels, and that was Bruce Lee. He was very nice because I started talking to him. I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Lee," and he looks at me and he said, "What company do you represent?" I said, "No, I'm just a martial artist. I'm from the States and I'm visiting," and we was talking in English. And we spoke about 5 minutes, and here's the guy at the height of his career. People are waiting for him in the limo, and he just stayed to talk with me, and I was very flattered at that point, and it was really nice of him. I said, most of the Chinese movies are pretty shitty, and then he goes, "I agree with you 100%. He has this very thick Cantonese accent, and then again, I'm listening to this guy's accent. I said, "Wow, what a thick Cantonese accent." And he said, "That's why I'm here with Warner Brothers. I'm talking to Warner Brothers, and we want to just make higher quality martial art movies."
Raymond asked me to read a script and to break down the script, so I did that. And in the beginning, I felt that the script wasn't for Hong Kong at all. So I told Raymond Chow about it, and I made out a budget and so forth. And then they came and started shooting. Bruce gave a lot of idea over there, and as well as the director, Bob Krause. So they discussed about how the development of the story, the scene, and especially Bruce will be talking about the fights.
Bruce Lee was finally on the path he'd originally intended. But instead of going to Hollywood, Hollywood came to him, and as always, on his terms. Production of Blood and Steel began in December 1972. While his first 3 movies were made with local audiences in mind, Blood and Steel, which was renamed Enter the Dragon by Lee, would cater to the world market.
My fight scene where the Handman, remember the Handman, was getting ready to do a number on me. So we were setting that fight scene up. So Bruce wanted me to just react a little bit more, throw my head a little bit more like this, boom, and sell the punches a little bit more. I said, "Jim, you're not selling that punch." I said, "Okay, Bruce. Okay, I'm gonna give you a good one." He said, "Let me show you." Bruce said, "Let me show you how to do it, Jim. Let me show you how to throw that head. They throw the head like this." We kind of playing around a little bit. So he said, Mr. Han, Mr. Han, I can't remember his name, but they actually play Han, the Handman. He said, "Throw that punch at me now. Jim, watch how I throw my head. I can do stunts too. Watch me." So Han was supposed to throw like a right cross. Boom! And Bruce said, "Okay, throw it now." So Han went, bam! Threw the right cross, man, and caught Bruce right on the chin, right here, on the lip. Split his lip, blood went flying. By accident. It was an accident. Accidents happen. But again, Bruce did not get mad. I mean, he took a beating on that set.
As his fame grew, so did the pressures of stardom. Lee was a recreational cannabis user since his days in Hollywood. But as stress grew, so did his use of marijuana and hashish.
I just know that Bruce, also outside of the film business, he was under incredible pressure. He was constantly, not constantly, but he told me people wanted to challenge him in the streets, and he was always watching his back. And I think at one point, it came to the point where Bruce was carrying a gun.
On May the 10th, 1973, Lee suffered a major setback.
We were helping Bruce Lee duck Enter the Dragon. We had just broken for lunch when we heard someone shouting from the upstairs toilet. We then ran up to see what was wrong. We saw a body lying outside the toilet door, and it was Bruce Lee. We tried to bring him around and carry him into the dubbing room and place him on the sofa. I remember his mouth was juddering up and down as though he was experiencing an epileptic fit. So the sound mixer placed a metal spoon in his mouth. And then the producer came and took him to hospital.
On the evening of May 10th, somewhere after 5 o'clock, after I'd finished my afternoon clinic, I received a call that someone was being brought in from Golden Harvest and that it had something to do with Bruce Lee. On arrival, in fact, it was Bruce himself. He was brought in by several men who were carrying him without a stretcher. He was deposited on the examination table in the emergency room, and they quickly made an exit. We had one nurse who was assigned to the emergency room, and she was to call other help as needed. It became obvious right away that because Bruce was so ill, that my help was quite frightened, and they absented themselves as quickly as they could. Bruce's situation was one that appeared to be quite serious. He had very irregular respiration. He was perspiring profusely. His color was not good. He was alternatingly flaccidly unresponsive and then some rigidity. There was occasionally some stiffness of his neck. His pupils did not react as they should. And he literally looked like a dead person. Because I saw that I was going to have difficulty getting sufficient assistance, I had the hospital switchboard call for some of the people who helped me with anesthesia. Dr. Cecilia Wong, a very well-trained anesthesiologist, responded, came in. We moved an anesthesia machine from the surgery suite on the floor above. In the meantime, I'd been using an ambu bag, an emergency device to assist with respiration. We actually placed a tube in Bruce's windpipe or trachea to assist with the respiration better and to prevent him vomiting into his windpipe. We got an IV going, put a stomach tube down to evacuate stomach contents, and in the meantime assessed him as having something going on inside his head. Because southern-born Chinese, and particularly Hong Kong Chinese, have a reported high incidence of abnormalities of the blood vessels in the brain, and because of what we knew of the history of his collapse, we thought that was what was happening. A decision was made to give mannitol, a drug which shrinks the brain but causes tremendous urine output. A catheter was placed in the bladder to take care of that, and as the mannitol was given, Bruce began to improve a great deal. A contact had been made with Dr. Peter Wu, a neurosurgeon with whom Dr. Wong worked frequently, and a man to whom I referred patients and who'd cared for me as a patient previously. And Dr. Wu concurred in that decision and eventually received Bruce when we moved him from Baptist to St. Teresa's. Baptist Hospital had no available beds, and we felt that Bruce needed to be in a place where he could get intensive nursing care. And I went with him in the ambulance, still resuscitating him with the anesthesia machine as we moved into St. Teresa's. By this time, he was very much improved after he had struggled and resisted us in a discoordinated way as we were working on him. And he was received in the emergency facilities at St. Teresa's, and then from that point, Dr. Wu took over his care.
He was brought in unconscious. He was in coma, and he was having a fit. And we brought him to the hospital in really quite a serious situation. From what we gather is caused by cerebral edema, the swelling of the brain. So we were assembled and there, and we did some resuscitation for him, and he was very lucky. The next day, He regained his consciousness completely, and he was able to relate to us what happened that day. So as a matter of fact, what he told me was that while he was taping for the film, he chewed a couple of leaves which he had been given by somebody else, and this was hashish leaf, and so he had a severe nausea and vomiting, and then he lapsed into coma while he was vomiting, and we did obtain a specimen from his vomitus, and which discovered the a quantity of hashish. So our diagnosis was that he had probably an overdose of this stuff, or he may be unusually sensitive to this stuff, and that was the cause of his trouble. So we had given him a warning before he was discharged from the hospital, saying that he was very lucky. It happened that we were there at the time when he was in critical conditions. We were there to be able to do something about it. And had he not, no medical attention had been available, he would have been dead.
Bruce left Hong Kong soon thereafter, and as I understand it, went to the West Coast to seek further medical opinion, and I did not see him related to that illness thereafter.
Bruce had a thorough physical checkup in the States, and the doctor responsible for his checkup told him that he was a man in the 20s. His physical fitness was such that he was still a man in his 20s. So I think Bruce must be fully convinced by then that he was invincible. You know, he was really in his perpetual youth. That was probably what brought him down, I think.
Enter the Dragon now completed, Lee returned to work on Game of Death.
There's a movie he did with a basketball player, Game of Death, and he was going to finish it with me. And he wasn't going to kill me off. It was about different levels, and we're talking about spirituality and different levels of awareness as you get to the higher levels in this temple that he had built. And I think he'd done the first 2 levels or something at the time. We were going higher.
Taiwanese sex symbol Betty Ting Pei was to play opposite Lee.
I ran into Bruce, his wife and Raymond Chow, in front of the hotel. Introductions were given by Raymond, and this was the very first time we met.
He was telling me at the time, which I got to admit I didn't take much notice of, he was getting headaches. And I was thinking, God, you look healthy. I mean, I've never seen anybody look healthier than you. And I just dismissed it. And then the second time he told me was in a restaurant, Japanese restaurant, the night before I was leaving. So I'll have dinner with you tomorrow night. I said, look, if you're not feeling well, don't worry about it, and I'll see you when I get back from London. I was going to London, my wife was going to have a baby, and I was going to come back and do the movie. He said, no, I said I'll have dinner with you, so I'll be there.
He visited my home to discuss the screenplay for Game of Death, which was to star us both.
But that evening, I was with Raymond Chow, who was the head of Gawa, the Golden Harvest, with Bruce. And Bruce was the main partner, and Raymond was like 50-50 almost. And Raymond and I were sitting there staring at each other with not much to say, and I said, where's Bruce? He said, I should be here. I said, well, call him. Let's see what's happened to him. And so he said, I know where he is. He's not at home. He's with this other woman.
Bruce said he was experiencing a headache, so I gave him a painkiller. He then asked if he could rest in my room. I said, okay, go and rest for a while. I feel this was a very normal reaction. If you have a friend in your home who is not feeling well, you would surely act in the same way by offering him a painkiller.
I said, you got a phone number? I said, call me. So he calls up, and Betty Ting Pei was her name. Answered the phone and says, I can't wake him up. And Raymond said, well, try and wake him up, and we'll wait a little longer. So we waited about another half an hour, and more sake and beer or whatever, and he called back again. And I said, call back again. He called back again. He said, he can't wake up. I said, well, get a goddamn ambulance.
On the night of July 20th, I was contacted quite late at night by a physician who identified himself as a house officer at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. He stated that someone that he thought to be Bruce Lee and who'd been identified as such had been admitted to his ward and was already dead. There was evidence that he'd been dead for probably hours, and he was quite concerned because he had no history, nothing that could help him, and he found my card on Bruce's person. And he had called me at that number. He wanted to know what I had treated Bruce for, any help that I could give him, and I gave him that information. And I remember that he asked me for my advice, which is unusual for a Chinese to ask a foreigner. And I said to him that I thought there was potentially big trouble ahead, that if Bruce was already dead, there was not anything he could do to help clinically, and that he'd better be very careful and discreet about putting his name on anything, and that I felt that almost certainly there would be a lot of attention drawn to this event, and that discretion was very important, and that he should contact someone very responsible in the administrative level of the hospital to take over from that point, and urged him not to do anything to the body, not to give any therapy if he was sure that he was dead, and not to put his name on anything. The evening began with Bruce in the apartment of Betty Ting Pui with Raymond Zhao, specifically for a kind of business meeting and rehearsal of a script. Now, there's no question in my mind that that was valid information. That sometime during the course of the evening, Bruce began to feel unwell and went into the bathroom in her apartment while Raymond was still present. He then actually lay down because he was feeling bad. In retrospect, I think that was a bit unwise on his part. If he was feeling that bad, he should have either gotten to a physician or he should have gone to his own home, but perhaps he was anticipating he would feel better. Sometime thereafter, Raymond left the apartment to meet another business engagement, and Betty eventually, when she went in to check on Bruce, found that he was not only asleep, but that he was unresponsive, and she became frightened. Now, I'm not sure how she knew how to get in touch with Raymond. I don't know whether it was a beeper. I don't think we had cellular phones at that time. But anyhow, she was able to make contact with him. And either at his advice or on her own initiative, she then called her own personal physician, who was Dr. Eugene Ju. Dr. Ju went to the apartment. I'm not sure whether he was told that it was Bruce Lee that he was going to see. But as I understand it, when he arrived, Bruce was already dead. Now, there have been some discussion since then about whether or not he actually tried to resuscitate, but the information that I was given was that Bruce was already definitely dead. Dr. Ju instructed Betty that she should get a government ambulance right away. The ambulance arrived. It was a multi-story apartment in a place where there were several buildings, and so just getting someone into an elevator and getting them down from an upper floor apartment is quite an engineering project, but the ambulance driver did that. He did not certify death. He took Bruce's body to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Now, who escorted the body, so I have no idea. But when he arrived at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is the largest acute hospital, or was at that time, in the British Commonwealth, he was taken into a very well-equipped, very active emergency room, and I'm sure that with his face on every billboard in town, he was recognized immediately, and he was actually admitted to the floor, still with no one having certified that he was dead. Now, I was not present for these events, and I could only assess them by inference. But this says to me, here's a famous person who is about as bad as you can get. He's dead. And no one wants to have to be the responsible person to make that pronouncement. And so you just keep passing to the guy down the hall, because you're not going to hurt the patient by delaying, and you hope that you'll be off duty and 100 miles away when they start trying to reconstruct who did what. And I've seen that syndrome so often in Hong Kong that I have to believe that that's what happened.
When I saw him, he was just lying nicely in bed, well dressed, no sign of any violence or any other struggling. So to me, when I first saw him, I thought he was asleep. Well, I had a quick look at him, looked at his pupils, and found that the pupils actually were quite dilated. And when I listened to the heart, there was no heartbeat. So it's obviously that he was not alive. Tried to do some resuscitation and did some external cardiac massage, but obviously it was not going to help. So I quickly asked for the ambulance to come to take him to a public hospital.
Somewhere after midnight, I received a call from Mr. Raymond Zhao. He told me what had happened. I explained to him that I'd had the call from Queen Elizabeth Hospital. He said that both he and Mrs. Lee, Linda, were quite shaken, of course, and wanted to actually come and talk with me. He did not tell me exactly why, but in view of the circumstances, I certainly felt that I could not refuse that, and within just minutes, they arrived at my home. Mr. Zhao was obviously quite shaken, and I could certainly see all the reasons. He was a personal friend, he was very much involved in business, and I think perhaps even a partner, and so I could see that there were great financial concerns as well as the personal loss. And of course, Linda was really devastated, and though she was conducting herself with considerable self-control, she broke down and sobbed at several points during our conversation. She wanted to know if I felt that I had enough information to tell her whether or not the same thing had happened that had happened when I had treated Bruce earlier. And I told her I could only surmise that he was reported to be dead when he was seen on the floor at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. She wanted my reassurance that something had not been left undone that could be done in terms of his earlier treatment.
I was talking to another doctor who involved in the resuscitation team. I told him, I said, Don, his name was Don. I said, Don, I can bet you that Bruce will come back sometime. But I hope that next time we will still be here to look after him. But I'm not convinced that he's going to give up. But I said, he probably will come back. And Don rang me up. He says, Peter, what you had told me came true this morning. Bruce is dead.
When they pushed his body out, it was fully covered with a white sheet. I pulled the sheet back halfway and saw him lying there with both his hands clenched into fists and rested in a cross fashion. I then pulled the sheet to look at his leg, only to see his toes were clenched together, just like someone who has suffered a fit. Also, his body was swollen all over. I suspect he must have suffered a fit before his death. I was also aware that he suffered from epilepsy when he was young.
Went back to the hotel and my phone was ringing. And there was a Hong Kong reporter on the phone saying, Bruce Lee's dead, what do you think?
Bruce Lee's death stunned Hong Kong. As news of his demise spread around the globe, the impression he left behind could clearly be seen. Martial arts schools around the world started their classes with a moment of silence. Theater marquees posted memorials, and moviegoers held candlelight vigils. On July 24th, a public funeral was held in Hong Kong. As many as 20,000 fans swelled the funeral parlor area to catch a glimpse of Lee's coffin and the endless stream of celebrities that poured in to say their farewells. Lee's widow, Linda, and their 2 children, Brandon and Shannon, attended the ceremony in traditional Chinese mourning garb. and Linda followed the rituals of the ceremony without complaint. Unfortunately, a fantastic and controversial scandal had broken into the newspapers. Originally, Raymond Chow and Linda Lee told the press that Lee had collapsed in his home and later died at the hospital. New reports stated that Lee died at the home of sexpot actress Betty Ting Pei, with whom Lee was reportedly having an affair. What added more fuel to the fire was that the two were alone on the night Lee died. The Chinese press were having a field day. Meanwhile, fans around the world were beginning to ask questions about Lee's abrupt end. Was foul play involved? Was he truly dead? Whatever small amount of information came out of Hong Kong was quickly read, analyzed, and dissected. An official inquest was held to get a clear answer as to what happened to Lee on the night of July 20th. Forensic experts from as far afield as England were called in to show their findings based on tests carried out on Lee's body. Traces of equagesic, the painkiller Lee had taken that night, were found, along with cannabis. The public revelation that Lee took drugs gave the press even more fuel to add to the raging controversy. Bruce Lee had 2 life insurance policies that hung in the balance. If it could be proved that Lee died of his drug use, the insurance companies could forfeit the policies, since Lee stated that he did not use drugs. The final verdict was that Lee's death was caused by misadventure, which means a series of unrelated events that can lead to a mishap. Needless to say, many observers, including Lee's doctors, were leery not only of the verdict, but of the whole inquiry itself. Prior to the actual inquiry, a private session was held in order to assemble information, which some of the prospective witnesses found highly irregular. The jury's decision was that Bruce Lee had died by hypersensitivity towards an ingredient found in the equagesic tablet he took.
To call a pre-trial hearing from which any spectators are excluded suggests that you may be trying to taint the evidence a bit. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened, but I just felt a bit uncomfortable in the situation. The person who was sort of the honoree at that meeting was Dr. Tier, who I understand was quite a well-known forensic pathologist who had been brought from England specifically for purposes of his expert witness. Dr. Tier led the discussion, saying that to his knowledge there were no authenticated cases of death, and I'm saying authenticated cases of death, in the medical literature having occurred because of the use of cannabis, marijuana, hashish, any of those group of chemical derivatives which have the same parent plant. And he felt that because Hong Kong is a sort of a microcosm, and because it does not figure in a big way in medical legal decisions, and since most of the people in Hong Kong have their credentialing from other countries, that we needed to be pretty careful as a medical community about making some statement that Bruce Lee, this very famous person, has died unequivocally as a result of the use of cannabis or one of its derivatives, particularly since there was good evidence that from the chemical analysis of the contents of Bruce's body that not only was a cannabis byproduct on board, but equagesic also.
I was informed by the coroner that they did find at autopsy the same stuff in his stomach. But of course, the coroner's inquest was, the verdict was that he died from hypersensitivity towards a drug which he's been taking, the equagesic, which is analgesic, as a painkiller.
Equagesic is taken by the million dose in the Orient. It is not one of those drugs which I had ever had drawn to my attention as causing medical complications before. It seems to me almost ludicrous to assume that when the same product was found on his person, immediately, oh well, I shouldn't say immediately, as I understand it, the autopsy was done on Monday after he died on Friday night and the samples were taken. If they could still find evidence of cannabis products that had not been degraded by that time, we have to assume he had a significant amount on board. To reach out here and pick equagesic out of the blue seems to me an almost deliberate effort to avoid the obvious. And if the reason to avoid it was because there were no previous cases reported, that's a kind of an asinine reasoning in my way of thinking, because this means that people who were taking Equagesic without problems might now be afraid to. It means that those who are Bruce Lee disciples would avoid facing the obvious. It might call into question the validity of payment of life insurance, and that I certainly did not want the family to be deprived of anything that would be rightfully theirs in terms of the premiums that had been paid. In the meantime, we do know that Bruce had admitted taking the cannabis, so his own statement validated our initial impression. And we know that he had gone to the West Coast, and reportedly, the West Coast of the United States, and reportedly been told by a neurosurgeon there that not only was the drug harmless, but even that he himself experimented with drugs, hallucinogens at times, because he found it very relaxing. So it seems to me that you got to throw your elbow out of joint to reach in some pocket for an Equagesic conclusion when this other evidence is so obvious. And that may be a superficial judgment on my part, but I really had trouble coming up with an Equagesic verdict. I mean, you almost have to use a Ouija board to come to that conclusion.
In the months immediately following the inquest, Hong Kong papers devoted a riotous level of attention to the rumors surrounding Lee's death. Superstar Bruce Lee dies. The barricades were up to keep back the crowds outside the Kowloon funeral.
Showman's farewell. Fans wept, stars bowed their heads, and the widows wore white today.
Cannabis was in Lee's stomach. A government chemist today told the Bruce Lee inquest.
Bruce Lee was a sick man. Top Chinese actor Bruce Lee had been seriously ill for 2 months before his death. It was learned yesterday.
Lee inquest. Betty to be recalled. Screen actress Betty Ting Pei.
$1 million hangs on Lee verdict. If the resumed inquest into Bruce Lee finds that he died from the effects of taking dangerous drugs.
Bruce Lee, victim of the ninjas? A Japanese assassin, a poisonous herb in the night, self-inflicting snorting of cocaine. But even more incredible than these is one method of killing which involves what's known as a delayed death strike. Another rumor is that Bruce Lee met his death in a blood feud with triad gangsters. Some people still believe that Bruce Lee is still alive and lives as a recluse in a remote corner of China.
He sure knows how to fight for his defense.
With the success of Enter the Dragon and the international bankability of Lee's name, Bruce Lee in death inspired a legion of pseudo-similar androids, guys who operated under nom de plume such as
King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. Let him show what he can do. He's the King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. Let him show what he can do. He uses every human capability with a fingertip sensitivity. His Kung Fu courage set in motion. It's a massive dynamic explosion. Power fills his eyes as he strikes. Terror with his cries. He's the King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. Let him show what he can do. He's the King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu. King of Kung Fu.
the best and most popular of the imitators was Bruce Lee, who also recreated Lee's life in this film.
I always tell the producers, Bruce Lee is my idol. I like him, I admire him, but don't make me show his lousy movie. You may call me Ho Zhongdao or James Hall, but I don't like people call me Bruce Lee or Lai Xiaolong because they changed this name just like cheating, a kind of cheating people's, this is Bruce Lee, he's not dead yet, but I don't like it because I want to be myself.
Unleashed to wreak vengeance on the evil ones who brought about his untimely death. 5 years ago, Bruce Lee, king of Kung Fu and undisputed master of the martial arts, was buried, but not before making a deal with the Black Angel of Death. Now, his tormented soul returns as Bruce Lee fights back from the grave.
Damn you!
Apart from his human imitators, Lee was also depicted as an animated hero. What is surprising is that his cartoon antics were not that far removed from what he did in his live-action films. This Indian film was a psychedelic tribute to the martial arts master. Bruce Lee's truest legacy was found in his son, Brandon. Brandon Bruce Lee had admired his father and had difficulty separating the myth he heard from the breathing human being he had briefly known. The younger Lee had not wanted to be a martial artist or to make action movies. He studied drama at Emerson College in Boston and took acting lessons in Manhattan in hopes of becoming a serious actor, but had little success in getting the roles he wanted. He eventually chose to take advantage of his unique heritage. He decided to jumpstart his career by making a few martial arts movies and hoped he would then make the transition to more serious movie making. This decision would eventually lead to his death.
Because of being my dad's son, totally, solely because of being my dad's son, I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of stupid action movies that I've turned down, For that reason, I was always, it's not about that. I mean, that's not what acting's about. It's not what, listen to me, I'm a 27-year-old actor with 3 films under his belt telling me what acting's about. In my opinion, in my young, uncultured, uneducated opinion, it's not what it's about. It's about people and human situations, and that's what's always affected me about it, And if it doesn't have that, I mean, if the film, if you don't care about the characters and you don't believe in them as people, it's just kind of a pointless exercise in blowing things up,
Absolutely.
And
did you worry? I mean, when did you decide to become an actor? When did you decide that was what you wanted to do?
That's what I always wanted to do. I didn't really ever want to do anything else.
And the martial arts you studied at the same time, but not because you wanted to be a martial arts star in that sort of way, I presume.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't. My dad started training me as soon as I could walk. He trained me while he was alive, and after he passed away, I just kind of kept at it because I didn't really think about it much. You know how you get started at something, you just continue with it. And my dad had a circle of students that were close to him, and so they were friends of our family. And one of those men, Danny Inosanto, continued to be my teacher. So it was kind of a nice unbroken line, you know. And I hadn't really done it at that age, certainly, with any thought of getting into martial arts movies. It's just kind of been that I have this skill and have first happened to get the opportunity to do films that give me a chance to use it.
Were you worried about becoming an actor because of the fact, excuse me, that your father was Bruce Lee? Were you worried that people were going to just see you as sort of trying to follow on in his legacy and kind of take advantage of it in a way, I suppose?
Yeah, it's something to be careful about. Because my dad left a really wonderful legacy, and I meet people all over the world who really admire him and admire his work, and really have been very positively affected by it too, you know. And I wouldn't want to do anything to mar that, you know. But I don't think I'm going to.
Weren't you asked to star in some sort of biopic they're making about your father's life next year? You were asked. And you turned that down, didn't you?
Yeah, I just, I was a little scared by the whole thing, really. It's strange to play your own father, you know.
I can imagine. Is it?
Kissing your own mother, you know, I don't know. It's kind of a, kind of an Oedipal thing, you know. It could be kind of strange. It's funny, too, because, to tell you the truth, if it had come along later in my career, you know, I might have more seriously considered it. But as it is, it's so early in my career, it's the kind of thing I just feel like it could really be a career ender. You know what I mean?
It could be there and then gone.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody's ever done it, really, have they? I mean,
starred as their own father.
Did they ever get any of the Douglas boys or anything like that? Or?
No, but he's not dead yet.
He's not, is he? Right. Well, I don't know. I couldn't really wrap my mind around it. You know what I mean?
Did you have to, I mean, you said that you turned down a lot of action films early on because you didn't want to end up, you know, just making martial arts movies or whatever. Was it ever a sort of worry for you, like, oh my God, I'm going to be a starving actor because I have to keep turning down these sort of movies? Is anyone ever going to offer me something that's a bit more inspired?
Yeah.
How worrying? Did you chew your nails off?
Well, you know, I mean, I worked, you know, I mean, I just supported myself in other ways and went to acting classes and
because you went to
cheap.
A lot of acting classes. I mean, you were obviously very serious about wanting to be an actor first and foremost.
Yeah. I've been doing it for a while. It's what I wanted to do since I was very young. I went to college and studied theater, and when I got out of college, I went to New York and enrolled in a theater group there called the American New Theater and did some stage work, and I'm in a theater group now in Los Angeles called Legal Aliens, and it's a good way of life. I'm getting the chance now to actually get paid for what I've wanted to do for most of my life, and it's great. I mean, I'm a big fight fan myself, you know. I mean, I enjoy those films, and even like you say, we were talking earlier about how some of those films are a little short on character development and plot. It's like, sometimes I even don't mind that as much, but it's like, if you're not going to give me that, at least do something innovative with the action, you know what I mean? The very least, give me that. And unfortunately, I don't think that's done that often either. I'm a big fan of Hong Kong martial arts movies. I think that the action sequences in Hong Kong martial arts movies are unparalleled. They're so much more inventive and daring. The way they're executed, so much better. They're shot better. The people in them are very skilled. They really leave Western movies in the dust, you know. But that's only those segments of the movies. The rest of the movies, really, the quality's not so great usually. I wanted to try and bring some of that flavor of those Hong Kong martial arts movies, because that's where I grew up, you know. And that's where I did my first film. And I wanted to try and bring some of the flavor of that into Rapid Fire, because I've always been a lot more impressed by those films' action sequences than by any films that are done in America. problem with making a martial arts movie in the modern day world is there are guns.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care how good you are. If you're more than 4 or 5 feet away from me and I've got a gun, you're going to lose. You know what I mean? And I wanted to stay true to that in the film because I hate it in the, you know, like Schwarzenegger Commando, and guys are like automatic weapons, and they're like all missing, you know? It's like chewing up the dirt near him, and I mean, you do that to me too many times in the audience, and you lose me, you know? I go, bullshit, you know?
It's like that scene, did you ever see that film, the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where the guy
Oh, it's great, yeah,
it's
that's the traditional film, you know? That's like the bit, I was kind of stealing that a little bit with the nunchucks, you know, when the guy's doing the nunchucks, it's like you just take a towel and go, throw it into the middle of it, ties it up, you know?
The Crow was to be Brandon's 5th and biggest film.
The next movie is called The Crow. It's
about martial arts birds.
Martial artist birds. No, actually, it's about love, death, revenge, Edgar Allan Poe, and coming back from the dead.
Is it based on the Edgar Allan Poe story?
No, actually, that's The Raven. But it's based on an underground comic book, a graphic novella by a guy named James O'Barr that's called The Crow. And it's a story of a rock and roll musician and his fiancée who are brutally murdered in Detroit. And then
It's a big part for you then.
Yeah.
How long do you stay alive for?
Yeah. Actually, you know, in the film, I'm actually alive for a very short period of time. But then I get to come back from the dead to avenge the murders.
Don't we just love the movies?
During the final week's filming of The Crow, Brandon Lee was to tragically die in a cruel accident.
Brandon Lee, 28, died at 1:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday at New Hanover Regional Medical Center.
At approximately 9 a.m. this morning, an autopsy was performed on the body of Brandon Lee at Angelo Memorial Hospital in Jacksonville, North Carolina. What appeared to be a .44 caliber bullet was removed from Lee's body.
Ironically, like his father, Brandon Lee was to only make 5 films.
I feel that I've gotten opportunities that I probably would not have gotten, or at least in a different fashion would have gotten, were I not his son. And I'm very grateful for that.
I considered him by far the greatest, and for those who don't consider him the greatest, at least he would be the top candidate for being he who would actually be the greatest.
There's no question in my mind he would have gone on to become not just a martial artist per se, but a really accepted and recognized actor in his own right.
Bruce Lee, in retrospect, was a little man who forged himself into a physical giant.
He was a breaker of boundaries, and that's why he was different.
He left a great gift to all the martial artists, business people, because his movie really made the martial art industry very popular. And many of my students said, oh, they came in because they were inspired by Bruce Lee's movie.
He'll be remembered forever and ever. His films are... Everyone in the world has seen Enter the Dragon.
Before Bruce Lee, the character, passes into international mythology, what is there to say, finally, about the human being who lived, breathed, and died? Perhaps the highest compliment that Lee's own fans could pay him would be to look past the screen caricature, beyond the high kicks, to recognize the ways that he resembles the rest of us. Most of us look for immortality in religion, in our work, or on our tombstone. Bruce Lee found his immortality in the movies.